Hurry up, 5 minutes. 5 minutos. Esta noche es muy caliente.
Hey, download your TikTok app today so you can have Chinese spyware in your house for free. You go down! Give me money!
Fucking future!
We're talking about a fat ass and everything, yeah.
No, I said loud ass. It's like I took a poop and it was one of those painful ones that brings a tear to your eye. Oh. There's no reason for it to cut out. It feels like it. Oh, what are we gonna drink tonight? Little Whistle Pig. Penises? There's no way. What the hell? What the hell? Oh, okay. Now everything's ready. I don't know what the heck I'm doing. You figure at some point I'd have it figured out. Never. Never ever. Prime days, is that the ad you got? Oh. Well, okay. I mean, I seen some deals, but none of them were like, dear mom. I think some of the better deals were like some of the Samsung products, but they're just trying to get rid of old inventory kind of thing. It didn't feel like their Walmart clearance prices, you know, it's like 15 to 20% off. Like, it's not really. Now, some stuff was marked down by a lot, but that was like really expensive stuff, and I just didn't have really expensive stuff money. I mean, the only thing I was even remotely interested in was, oh man, if there were deals on chicken cock. I wonder if they ever actually responded, because I don't check my emails. It would have been really cool, like, thank you for your interest in our product, but suck a bag of dicks. I know, for real. I mean, I don't know her shopping habits. Ray, you always shopping? We gonna see on an episode of Hoarders right next to mine? This is a first in Hoarders history. I got nothing but bathroom supplies sitting in my checkout, and I'm just like, I haven't gotten around to it. Oh. Man, Mochi, you better stop shopping online. It's the devil. Well, I don't know nothing. All I know is Roxy will eat raw potato. She will eat raw potato. She crunches that shit like it's delicious. I mean, I seriously doubt there's anything this dog won't eat. She keeps on finding food in the backyard, and I'm like, what the fuck? Spit it out! And she's just like, chomp, chomp. What? I don't know if Bezos is saying. Bezos isn't even part of that shit anymore. He sold his shares. He's out. Or is he? I don't know. No, Bezos didn't sell his shares. I'm sorry. I'm thinking about what's his fuck from Twitter. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. It's a keep failing upward enterprise that they've got going on with the sumbitch. The fuck is all this? Oh, it's fine. It builds character, Psycho. Calm down. Peanut likes Jeff Bezos? Or are you talking about he's into the stream? No way. Shut the front door. So we got one chapter left in our serial killers, the 10 worst serial killers, and then I think I'll just go back to reading Slash. Cheers. Cheers. Well, cheers, little dude. You got me on the big screen? What's going on? Or on the phone? Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. What was that? It was a bottle cap. It's fine. It's Yingling. It wasn't Bud Light. I don't drink light beer. Nah, so this. Put me on the big screen. The Puglies can watch me too. Chapter 10. Charles Sobrage, the Serpent. Unlike most young Westerners arriving in Thailand in December 1975, Stephanie Perry wasn't looking for adventure, a good time, or spiritual enlightenment. She was just looking for her associate, Vitaly Ved Hakim. Like thousands of others in the 1960s and 70s, Ved had gone east along the hippie trail that led from his birthplace in Turkey through Iran to India, Nepal, and Thailand. He'd sampled the black cakes of pure hashish and the Thai sticks of premium marijuana buds skewered on stems. Soon he started importing them to the Mediterranean paradise of Ibiza, or Ibiza if you say it like the locals, but I won't. I'm going to say Ibiza, whatever. Selling to the local sun seekers to pay for his dropout lifestyle. No, for those of you that aren't in the know, but you know, my European viewers know, but Ibiza is like a party island. Most of their income comes from tourist dollars. So it's just club after club, bar after bar, and tattoo parlor after tattoo parlor. And people get some pretty janky looking tattoos over there. That's besides the point. Most tattoo places in tourist towns don't hire quality artists. They just hire somebody that can bang them out quick. They're just like, fuck it, whatever. They're never going to come back here. He moved into heroin to make more money. Then started taking it himself, which ate into his bottom line. Shit, never get high on your own supply, dude. Actually, that expression I don't think was a thing back then. It might have been, but I doubt it. Before he knew it, he was out of his depth. Stephanie was due to pick up a false bottom suitcase full of drugs and take it back to Spain where she lived. But Vet had suddenly stopped returning her calls. The 24-year-old Frenchwoman had already trawled the $4 a night hotels of the area in her hunt for Ved, with no success. On 9 December, she rang a phone number she'd been given and asked to speak with Alain Gauthier. She'd been told that Ved was last seen in his company. Man, she's on it, like, right? And she's just like really trying to hunt down Ved. Like, where's Ved? He's where he needs to be. Alain did know Ved Hakim. He had been introduced to the long-haired dealer a few weeks earlier by another tourist who hung out in the lobby of the nearby Atlantic Hotel. Alain offered to take Ved to the mines of Chantaburi on the border with Cambodia in order to buy rubies, sapphires, and other fine gemstones at wholesale prices. But Ved ended up in the grounds of the Siam Country Club in Chonburi, just outside the beach resort of Pattaya. He had been drugged, then beaten viciously with wooden boards. As he lay bruised and bleeding on the ground, he was covered in gasoline and burnt alive. His charred remains were discovered on 28 November by a rice farmer working in the fields nearby. Okay, well, that escalated quickly. Nana thinks so. Ooh, Whistle Pig. It's no chicken cock, but it's a more mature rye. Lily? Who the hell is Lily? Oh, the neighbors. Okay. I was just like, Lily. Okay. Alain Gauthier's real name was Hachin Bahonani, Gurumukh Sobraj, though he rarely used it, assuming instead the identities of countless tourists whose passports he stole. The American press later called him the Charles Manson of the East. The police nicknamed him the Serpent because of his exceptional talent for deception. He himself took the name of Charles Sobraj whilst at boarding school in Paris, where he was famous for the impersonation he used to do of Charlie Chaplin. I mean, Jesus Christ, 60s... Okay, well, either way, I was just thinking, holy crap, that's a lot of... And Charlie Chaplin, by the time this guy was in school, was pretty outdated, I want to say. I mean, that's like me doing, I don't know, Bob Hope bits or something. Something like that. Something to that level. The kids my age wouldn't get it, right? Kids. Kids, here. Sobraj in his various guises was top of Interpol's most wanted list and sought by authorities in Thailand, Pakistan, Afghanistan, France, Greece, Turkey, Iran, Nepal, and Hong Kong. That was a wanted dude right there. The charge list included robbery, drug offenses, prison escapes, and murder. Keep the list short. Keep the list short. Keep them guessing. Keep them wanting more. Showbiz. Elaine agreed to meet Stephanie Perry in the foyer of the President Hotel, where she was staying. He told her he had an urgent message for her from Ved. The Thailand murders. Stephanie Perry's body was found washed up on a Pattaya beach on 14 December. Thai police did not yet suspect the serial killer might be in their midst. They just knew a murder had been committed. This woman had not drowned, but had been strangled with such force that her neck bones had broken. That's some grip strength right there. Although, you know, you can really get torque when you can get your fingers to overlap. I'm thinking Stephanie was a small person. They made no connection to the earlier death of Teresa Knowlton, whose bikini-clad body had been found by a fisherman on 18 October floating in the water off Pattaya Beach. The young American woman had been drinking and taking drugs, so investigators assumed that she had drowned accidentally. Still unidentified, she was photographed and then buried at the local Sawang Boriban cemetery. The similarly identified body of Ved Hakim was later buried close by. 3 deaths, 2 of them murders, a tragic period for the Thai police, but nothing that would raise undue concern in the popular resort of Pattaya. Pattaya. Anyways, on 12 December, 2 Dutch tourists arrived at Bangkok airport and were greeted by the beaming smile of Charles Sobraj, whom they knew as the gem dealer Alain Dupuy. Dupuy? I don't know. My French is rotten. He insisted they get a cab back to his place rather than stay in one of Bangkok's seedy hotels. Good call. Apartment number 504 was at the top floor of Kanit House, just off of Sukhumvit, the longest road in Thailand, and the main thoroughfare of the capital, Bangkok. The many adjoining Sui substreets of Sukhumvit bustle with cafes, bars, and red light districts of Nana Plaza and Soy Cowboy. The home of Alain Gautier was always full of young people hanging out, getting high, and then getting mysteriously ill. Dysentery was a common problem for travelers to Thailand, and those who showed the symptoms of it at Kanit House were grateful to Alain for nursing them back to health. He ended up with a small family of such people who felt they owed him a debt of gratitude. There were 3 French travelers, Dominique, Yannick, and Francois, and a young Indian by the name of A.J. Chaudhuri. Why does AJ get his full name and... well, whatever. Who would do anything for Alain. Then there was the French-Canadian medical secretary, Marie-André Leclerc, who had just left her fiancé in July to become Alain's live-in girlfriend, changing her name to Monique at his insistence. No, you would be named Monique. Well, there's a picture of Charles Sobraj and his girlfriend, Marie-André Leclerc. He just looks like such an unassuming, gaunt fella. tall, dark, and handsome. Murder, murder, murder! The newcomers were Dutch students called Henricus Henk Betanja and Cornelia Kaki Hemker. They were backpacking their way around the world before they settled down to get married. They saved up for 5 years before setting out from Amsterdam for their trip of a lifetime 8 months earlier. Cornelia was wearing a sapphire ring sold to her in Hong Kong at a bargain price by Elaine. He had promised to take her to the gem mines and teach Hank how to grade precious stones. The trip to the mines would have to be postponed, however, because shortly after arriving, the young Dutch couple fell ill with the same symptoms that afflicted so many of Elaine's house guests. I don't know. Seems kind of fishy, huh? Probably. Their gracious hosts had spiked their drinks with laxatives and heavy sedatives, producing stomach cramps, diarrhea, and debilitating fatigue, the classic symptoms of dysentery. Sobrage's favorite drug of choice was Largactil, a tranquilizer used to treat schizophrenia, which doctors sometimes describe as a chemical straitjacket. Mogadone and Mandrax were also in his cabinet, mixed with alcohol as they usually were by Sobrage. The drugs can cause hallucinations and disorientation. After 2 days, Hank grew scared and insisted Elaine take them to a hospital. Later that night, their host and his cohort, AJ, bundled the couple into his Toyota and drove towards Don Muang Airport, and then out through the rice fields just past the quiet town of Rangsit. When the car stopped and the doors opened, the confused young couple stumbled out into the dark amidst torrential rain. Hank realized they were in terrible trouble and groggily fought with Sobrage. But the lithe assassin was an expert in karate and had the hulking AJ to help him beat Hank to the ground. Together they drowned him in a deep puddle, then turned their attention to Cordelia, smashing in her skull. They doused the pair in gasoline, lit a match, and sped away. Charming fellas. The charred bodies were found by village school children the next day. The Thai police assumed that the young tourists, like Ved before them, were ambushed by one of the bandit gangs that roamed the roads around Bangkok to steal from wealthy Westerners. They were initially misidentified as 2 Australian tourists. By the time anyone realized who they were, or the person they had met just prior to their murders, Charles Sobrage had cashed the couple's traveler's checks and flown out of Bangkok to Kathmandu. He arrived in Nepal's capital city using the passport of the murdered Hank Betanja. The Nepal murders. Connie Jo Bronzich had traveled to Kathmandu by bus from Delhi to India. The 28-year-old Californian was trying to escape the violence and mayhem of her home city, Santa Cruz, where her father dealt smack. She was traveling light, but with the emotional baggage of a failed marriage and with a serious drug habit. Like most Westerners, she checked out into the Oriental Hotel on Freak Street, the epicenter of the hippie trail in Nepal. Soon she met a handsome young Canadian called Laurent Ormond Carrier, who was in the country club to climb Mount Everest. The unlikely pair became an item, hanging out in the cafes of Freak Street and taking in the sights. After just a couple of days, they were approached by a charming gem dealer from Bangkok and his beautiful wife. Connie Jo's horribly mutilated body was found on 22 December near Dhulikhel, 18 miles southeast of Kathmandu, by the main road through the foothills of the Himalayas to neighboring Tibet. She was discovered naked, except for a vest that had seared onto her skin after her body had been set alight. She had been repeatedly stabbed in a frenzied attack. Laurent Carrier's whereabouts were unknown at this stage, so he became the chief suspect. In reality, his body lay not far from Connie Jo's. His throat had been cut so deeply that his head was almost severed. Impressive. As the Nepalese police bagged Connie Jo's body, Charles Sobrage caught a plane back to Bangkok, where he and Monique planned to spend Christmas. When he arrived back in Thailand, however, he was in for a shock. Growing suspicion. The family, back at apartment number 504, read the reports in the Bangkok Post daily paper with increasing concern. The press had by now printed pictures of the bodies of the dead tourists from them Yannick recognized. Cornelia's denim skirt and what the paper described as a Made in Holland t-shirt, although the police still believed the victims were Australian. Well, you know that happens. Sobrage's housemates were convinced they were the two Dutch tourists whom Elaine and AJ had supposedly taken to the hospital for treatment. They confided in one of Sobrage's neighbors, Nadine Giris, who had already raised suspicions about the number of house guests who were falling ill. Together they searched the apartment for evidence and discovered that many of Hank and Cornelia's possessions had been left behind there. They also found dozens of passports that had been doctored to allow Sobrage to insert his own photograph into them. Among the passports was one belonging to Stephanie Perry. A piece of hose pipe on top of the refrigerator still smelt of gasoline. With an increasing sense of panic, they realized they had to flee the apartment before Sobrage returned home from Nepal. Can you imagine discovering that about a roommate? Well, could you? You can't. You can't. It's impossible. It doesn't happen like that. None of them much trusted the Thai police, who had a reputation for corruption and incompetence. They considered contacting the French embassy instead, but Elaine was known to have many contacts there. In the end, Sobrage's neighbor, Nadine Giris, confided in a French businessman she knew, and he in turn informed the British embassy. They passed the information on to the Thai police, who feared, did nothing whatsoever about it. I mean, catching dangerous criminals is rough. It's much easier to shake down a tourist for a little bribe. Dominique, Yannick, and Francois packed their bags and got on the next flight back to Paris. As they left from the departure gate at Bangkok Airport, Charles Sobrage was passing through the arrivals gate on his return from Nepal. It was an incredibly close escape, but he didn't see them. Sobrage was suspicious, however, because his calls to the apartment had gone unanswered. Rather than risk traveling there himself, he sent his trusted sidekick AJ to investigate. And it was he that discovered that the trio had fled. Sobrage sensed that Thailand was becoming too hot a place in which to operate, and elected to take a plane to safer climes. Incredibly, he chose the country in which he had just committed 2 murders, Nepal. Back there, the police had recovered Connie Jo Bronzich's journal. In it, she had noted down the name and address of the gem dealer she had run into, Alain Gauthier, 504 Canet House, Soi Saladang, Bangkok. For some reason, they did not ask the Thai police to pay the man a visit, and they failed to notice that he had paid a visit to them. Sobrage's numerous stolen passports meant he could travel under assumed identities with complete impunity. He initially left Nepal using Laurent Carrier's passport, which led the Nepalese to conclude that Connie Jo Bronzich had been killed by her new Canadian boyfriend, whom they surmised had then fled the country. The search for his present whereabouts drew a blank, and they puzzled over the identity of the male body in their morgue. Sobrage idled away at this time around Nepal until he felt it was safe to return to Thailand. He figured that the Thai police would have lost interest by now. He was right. But an unlikely new investigator had become interested in him, and this man would ultimately prove to be his nemesis. Ooh, nemesis. Dig it. Made in Holland. Herman Knippenberg was a young Dutch diplomat working at the embassy in Bangkok when he was contacted by the relatives of Cornelia and Henk to ask for help in tracing them. He began to investigate their disappearance. He soon heard the rumors about the gem dealer Alain Gauthier and how visitors to his flat seemed to become ill and vanish shortly afterwards. Cornelia and Henk had written home about meeting with the gem dealer, and this gave Knippenberg a crucial lead. He contacted the Thai police about the 2 bodies they had found, one dressed in a Made in Holland t-shirt. They revealed that the 2 missing Australian tourists initially thought to be the victims had in fact recently turned up alive and well. Knippenberg requested dental records from the Dutch couple's family and positively identified the bodies at last. It turned out to be Cornelia's bra, not her t-shirt, that was Made in Holland. Further investigation revealed the existence of the report the British Embassy had sent to Thai police 8 weeks earlier. When Knippenberg contacted the British, they revealed that they also had Henk and Cornelius' travel journal written in Dutch, which they had not bothered to have translated. When Knippenberg read it, he must have felt he was receiving messages from beyond the grave. It ended up with them meeting Alan Gautier. I mean, geez, Thai police, way to drop the ball. I mean, to be fair, it's the mid-70s, so what do you want? It's rare for them to speak English, nonetheless, Dutch. Knippenberg then drew up a report for the Thai police which outlined the evidence against Alain Gautier of 504 Cannet House. On 11 March 1976, they finally took action. 10 armed police officers surrounded Cannet House. Gautier was believed to be out, so they waited for him to return. The light began to fade, a problem for the authorities because under Thai law, the police can only enter a home between sunrise and sunset, unless they had a warrant. That's a weird rule. No one arranged the paperwork for such a warrant. Then, just in time, Charles Sabrage came home with Monique and AJ in tow. All three were arrested. Knippenberg was elated. He thought it was all over. He was wrong. The serpent slithers away. The Thai police released their 3 suspects after being shown an American passport bearing the name of David Allen Gore and the photograph of Charles Sabrage. He had stolen it 6 weeks earlier in Hong Kong. The unflappable killer claimed Alan Gautier was away on business, and the information the Thai police had received was probably supplied by a jealous rival. The visa stamps in the passport of David Allen Gore proved he was not in Thailand at the time of the Dutch couple's murder. Everything found in the flat was effortlessly explained away by the charming and professional schoolteacher from Iowa, David Gore. David Gore. Knippenberg was furious and contacted Ralph Nider at the U.S. Embassy to see if he could do anything about Sabrage. He was now using a stolen U.S. passport. The call proved crucial because Nider was investigating the disappearance of a U.S. citizen in Bangkok, Teresa Knowlton, whose bikini-clad body remained unidentified by Thai police. 2 of them arranged their own visit to 504 Cannet House, where they seized dozens of bags of papers and the personal belongings of the young travelers, who had stayed there and subsequently disappeared. The artifacts recovered included Cornelius' handbag, Hank's postal checks, and a book on meditation inscribed by Teresa Knowlton. They leaked the story of the Bangkok Post, which posted under the headline Web of Death on 7 May, and included photographs of the known victims. As planned, the Thai police were suddenly placed under immense pressure to find the killer. They looked again at the earlier death of Teresa Knowlton and concluded from the sand and the water in her lungs that her head had been held under water. Her death was no accident, but a cold-blooded murder. Oh, God, can you imagine? Nah, that's just a terrible, terrible way to go. And there's worse ways to go, but... Water and sand in your lungs? Eesh. Terrible. Her death was no accident, but a cold-blooded murder, and one probably linked to the murder of Stephanie Perry. Stephanie was wearing a mauve floral summer dress over red bikini bottoms where she was found. Teresa, a floral bikini. When she was found, Teresa, a floral bikini. Okay. The American press referred to the killings as the bikini murders, and the name stuck. The connection between Stephanie and Ved was soon established, linking another murder into the investigation. Teresa Knowlton, it transpired, had stopped in Bangkok en route to Kopan Tibetan Monastery in Kathmandu. She'd studied meditation in California, looking for a new path after her drug-induced teenage years in San Pedro and later Seattle. She thrived under the influence of Lama Yeshe, the monk who taught the course, taking him out on the ghost train at Disneyland and then agreeing to visit his monastery in return. But she wanted to visit Thailand, another Buddhist society, first. She checked into the Hotel Malaysia on Soi Garm Dupli, where most Western tourists stayed. Man, I can't stay at a place I can't pronounce. I'm just kidding. I'm sure if I heard a local say it a couple times, I'd probably get it right. But for now, it starts with an NG, and those always confuse me. Okay. It was one of the few budget Thai hotels that had aircon, decent plumbing, and a pool. There she ran into A.J. Chowdhury, and he took her back to Kannat House to meet Charles Sabraj, a self-professed Eastern mystic with a very different outlook on life from the Lamas of Kathmandu. And here's another lovely picture of Charles Kathmandu. Very unassuming. Penis. Sabraj would later claim that Teresa, like Stephanie, was a drug courier. There's no evidence of this, though her friends back in Seattle did notice that money seemed to appear mysteriously in her account. Hank and Cornelia were quiet and studious, the former posting corrections to his chemistry PhD papers home to Amsterdam University as he traveled. The only thing the young travelers had in common with the drug dealer Ved Hakim and the other victims was the misfortune to run into Charles Sabraj. At the same time that Teresa's body was exhumed, the body of Ved Hakim was too. As the Thai authorities took the charred body out from the sheet of plastic in which it had been wrapped, its head fell off. His father, Leon, left the country in disgust and despair, having identified Ved 6 months after the brutal murder. Despite compelling evidence implicating Charles Sabraj in Thailand's crime wave, it seemed that Ved's killer would never be caught. The police had to let him go, and by now, with all his fake passports, he could be anywhere in the world. In fact, he was in Delhi, the capital of India. By now, he was calling himself Daniel, and he was planning his most audacious crime yet. Most audacious. Curious. Let's keep reading, shall we? The India Crimes. Back in 1971, Sabraj had attempted to rob a jewelry store in the Hotel Ashoka in Delhi. But he had to dump his loot at the airport after it was sealed off by the police. He was finally caught in a stolen car in Bombay and imprisoned in Tihar jail. But he faked the symptoms of appendicitis after having his appendix needlessly removed. He managed to escape from the local hospital. He then persuaded his then-wife, Chantal, to drug his guard and then take his place in the bed whilst he fled. She never forgave him for her subsequent arrest and imprisonment. Jesus, man, you couldn't stuff a pillow or something? Like, really? Just put the guard under the blanket. Anyways, now Sabraj believed he could pull off another jewel heist, and this time get away with the stolen goods. His escape plan involved flying to South America and setting up a false identity there. And for this, he needed passports for himself, Monique, and his other partners in crime. This guy's a real shitbag, huh? An opportunity to obtain his favorite type of passports, French ones, presented itself when he met a group of French students who were on tour of Asia. Sabraj befriended them and plotted to drug them and steal their precious passports. In the restaurant of the Vikram Hotel in Delhi, he handed the group of 60 or so students some pills, which he claimed would protect them from dysentery. The plan was for the students to become sleepy after their meal, at which point Sabraj could quietly help himself to whatever they kept in their hotel rooms. But something went badly wrong. Sabraj misjudged the dose of sedatives he gave them, or perhaps failed to take account of the reaction the pills could cause when mixed with alcohol, which the students began to complain of dizziness, and several of them collapsed while still in the hotel lobby. Fucking lightweights. A doctor was called, and then the police, and then the French consul. With so many victims all in the same place and at the same time, even Sabraj could not keep control of the situation. One of the policemen who arrived at the scene was Superintendent Tully, one of the few Indian policemen who knew Sabraj from his prior crimes in India. He had identified Daniel as the international fugitive Charles Sabraj thanks to the scar left by his appendix operation. He was promptly arrested on suspicion of murder. And then they, gotcha, bitch! There were other crimes that the police did not yet know of. The death of French traveler Luc Solomon, who had died of a drug overdose after meeting Charles Sabraj in Delhi a few days before the Vikram Hotel debacle, and the death of Israeli tourist Alan Aaron Jacobs, found dead in his bed in a hotel room in the holy Indian city of Varanasi. Sobrage would later tell the writer, Richard Neville, that Jacobs was the only victim he ever felt sorry for, as he was a hard-working crane driver whom Sobrage killed by accident. Oops. All Sobrage wanted was his Israeli passport. At his trial, Sobrage would be charged with these killings too, although not with another case to which he was linked, that of a taxi driver called Mohammed Habib. Who disappeared whilst driving Sobrage around in Pakistan in 1972, nor with the death of middle-aged Frenchman André Bruggenot, whose death in a bathtub in Chiang Mai was ruled an accident, but which Charles later claimed was the result of his handiwork. Damn it, Charles, stop killing people. Well, I guess since the Indians finally nabbed him, he ain't killing no more. The Serpent on trial. On 5 July 1977, a year after his arrest, Charles Sobrage was led into Old Delhi's Tishasari courthouse to stand trial. He claimed that his extraordinary life of crime had been a protest against the French legal system, which he complained had stolen his youth. Okay, let's keep reading, because what? It was presumably a reference to the time he spent in the Poissy prison in Paris back in 1963 after being convicted of burglary at the age of 19. He served 3 years and then in 1969 did a further 8 months, this time for car theft. His antagonism to France and to the West in general stemmed from his upbringing in Saigon, South Vietnam, a war-torn French colony when Charles was born there in 1944. He never knew his natural father, an Indian moneylender, and was brought up by his mother, an illiterate Vietnamese woman. She met a French lieutenant named Alphonse Darroux, who helped raise Charles but refused to bestow upon him the Darroux family name. When they left Vietnam for France, Charles always felt like an outsider, unwanted by either his family or the country in which he was brought up. Crimes he now claimed was his revenge against this perceived injustice. Well, shit, so should I turn to a life of crime, guys? I'm ready. No, I'm not. I'm fat and tired and hurting. They would have to be really lame duck crimes. Probably. I wouldn't do it, though, because reasons. He gave interviews to Richard Neville whilst the trial progressed, and, according to Neville, Sobrage confessed to 5 murders in Thailand and 2 in Nepal. His story was that he was employed by the Triads, the East version of the Mafia, who ran a drug cartel from Hong Kong. All his victims, he claimed, were involved in drug trafficking. The killings were nothing personal, but just business. He later spoke at length to a second writer, Thomas Thompson. Really? How are you going to name your kid Thomas when you're... Whatever. Fucking parents can be assholes sometimes. That's not creative or cute. That's just terrible. Who used the interviews to write a best-selling book called Serpentine. By then, Sobrage was recanting all his confessions, however, and threatened to sue the publishers. For legal reasons, Thompson changed the names of many of the characters in his book, which explains why so many accounts of the case currently posted on the internet call certain victims by incorrect names. Jenny Bolivar for Teresa Knowlton, Charmaine Corot for Stephanie Perry, Annabella Tremont for Connie Jo Bronzich, and Laddie Dupar for Laurent Carrier. But whilst bragging of his crimes to outriders outside the court, on the witness stand, Sobrage maintained his total innocence of any involvement in the murders. The courts did not believe him. They heard how he cashed the traveler's checks and stole the passport of the Israeli crane driver Alan Aaron Jacobs. An Australian nurse called Mary Ellen Ether testified that she had been an accomplice in the poisoning of Luke Solomon's chicken curry, which subsequently proved fatal. Sobrage was found guilty in both cases and sentenced to life imprisonment. He was also sentenced to 2 years of the drugging of the students at the Vikram Hotel. He could not be tried for the crimes in Thailand. He faced extradition when he had served his time in India. If convicted there, he would almost certainly face death by firing squad. Life in an Indian jail was highly preferable, particularly as Sobrage had the money and charm to make his stay a relatively comfortable one. You know, it sickens me that even in jail, people with money and access to money serve less justice than a regular person would. But, honestly, I think that jail should be a place of healing and rehabilitation and paying your debt back to society. Your punishment starts when the moment you're found guilty and locked up for good or forever, however long. But, I've got a lot of opinions about jail and punishment, crime and punishment, but that's besides the point. Penis. The serpent caged and free. On Sunday, 17 March 1986, Charles Sabraj threw a birthday party in Tihar jail in Delhi. Such gatherings were against the rules, but the Sabraj soirees were legendary and enjoyed by the fellow prisoners and staff alike. Okay. The prison warders were his guests of honor. They happily tucked into the fruit and sweets that had been smuggled in by two of Charlie's ex-cellmates. Moments later, they were all unconscious, and Sabraj was in a getaway car speeding through the crowded streets of the Indian capital. After 10 years behind bars, he was free once more. Son of a bitch! Indeed, after years of court appeals, Sabraj had succeeded in getting all of his convictions overturned by higher courts in India. The only cloud in his otherwise clear blue sky was the prospect of extradition to Thailand and the possibility of facing a firing squad. In December 1985, the Indian High Court upheld a decision to allow his extradition to stand trial for murders of Hank and Cordelia. It may have been this that prompted his decision to escape. When he was recaptured at the O Coquiero restaurant at the beach resort of Goa on India's southwest coast, he was sentenced to a further 10 years in jail for his escape. It would bring his total amount of time in the Indian prison system to 21 years, 1 year longer than the Thai statute of limitations. Ooh, you lucky dog. That meant when he was finally released from Tihar in 1997, he could not be tried for the murders he was alleged to have committed in Thailand. Instead, he was deported back to France. One of his first acts was to pray in front of the statue of St. Teresa in Notre Dame Cathedral. For the next 7 years, Sabraj lived the celebrity lifestyle of a world-famous ex-convict, charging large sums of money in return for interviews and selling the movie rights to his life story. It seemed as though the serpent had, in the end, had the last laugh. But he then made what remains perhaps his most inexplicable move. He returned to the one country in the world that still had a valid arrest warrant for him, Nepal. There's no statute of limitations in Nepal, and Sabraj still wanted for the murders of Connie Jo Bronzich and Laurent Carrier. He was spotted in a casino in Kathmandu and arrested whilst in the middle of a game of Baccarat. On 20 August 2004, he was found guilty of Connie Jo's murder and sentenced to life imprisonment. In September 2014, he was convicted of murdering Laurent Carrier and handed a second life term. Shit, bro. After his release from prison in 1997, Sabraj sued the members of press who called him a serial killer, pointing out that his earlier convictions had been overturned. His current convictions once again earn him the dubious distinction of that title, however. He is almost unique amongst his breed. His motivation was not one of sexual sadism. What then drove him to commit such heinous crimes? Money? He made a few $1,000s from cashing his victims' traveler's checks, but nothing truly substantial. Back in a minute, he made more selling gems. He was a traveling hitman working for an organized crime gang, as he claimed. Oh, was he? Was he? Nah, who knows? The travel journal of Hank and Cordelia appears to rule that out, but instead confirms they were innocent tourists. Most serial killers have a patch in which they commit their crimes, returning to the safety of familiar ground time and again. Sabraj, in contrast, left a trail of blood halfway around the world. He killed people of both sexes, the young and the middle-aged. In the end, it begins to look chillingly as though he simply killed because he could. Alright, fair enough. He appeared to want to teach the Western tourists who flocked east in search of spiritual enlightenment how naive they were, how easily manipulated, how stupidly trusting. He, who had from an early age had to fight for everything he got, resented the ease with which privileged Westerners cast off their materialism in their quest for something deeper. What could be deeper than life and death, the power of which he soon realized he held in his hands? Be careful, he seemed to say to travelers, or you might run into someone crazy and dangerous, a person more depraved than you could ever even dream of. And to prove his point, he became that person, that nightmare, that twisted, all-powerful God. Sabraj became the first serial killer to operate on a truly global scale in an ever more closely connected world. He is unlikely to be the last. Inexplicably, Sabraj returned to Nepal in 2003, where he was arrested yet again and given a life sentence for the 1975 murders of Bronsich and Carrier. Well, this one's done. He's done. He's done. Who's messaging me right now? Okay. It's my boy, Roberto. Oh, they're telling me to save now, sleep later. They're pushing this Prime Day thing pretty hard. Okay. Thoughts about Monsieur Charles Sabraj? No? Okay. Bum ba da bum. Take a quick breather and talk about these murder. Oh, everybody left? Okay, cool. Guys, it's not over yet. I didn't leave. I'm still here. This is why we can't have nice things. I mean, I was going to continue with the Slash book, right? If you guys are okay with that. Because, I mean, it hasn't even been a full hour yet. We're sitting at the one thing. 47 minutes? No way. It's been... Okay, maybe 47 minutes. That sounds like it could be right. Okay. We can get back to it. Don't rush me. Stop it. This shit's fucking busted as shit. Guys, if you could refresh or chat or something, I'd appreciate it. You know what? On that note, it's time for a little bit more of the 10-year aged rye, the Whistle Pig. Oh, it's like spicy trough water, man. Oh, are we ready? Are we ready for more re-adding? Or I'm not going to call it yet. Got to finish at least this one chapter from Slash. Oh, I don't even know where I should continue from. It's been so long since we read from this book. God, how many books have we read on Books and Bourbon? I started with the, I remember exactly which book I started with. I started with the Mike Rowe book, the guy from Dirty Jobs. Very nice collection of short stories and about combining his life and other people's stories. It was a really good read. It was bite-sized. It was definitely a good bathroom book reader, but I read it on stream. That's what we started with, and then what did we switch to after that? I think we did Thank You for My Service by Matt Best. Then we did the Tim Kennedy book. Was it Red, White, and Scarred or something? I don't know, but that was a really good read. Like, I thought Matt Best was my spirit animal, but turns out that Tim Kennedy is my spirit animal. He lived the life that I dreamed of having, but I just took the wrong path. But he got into an X-ray situation, which is something different altogether. For those of you that remember, they had that special fast track program for Green Berets and so on and so forth. But I digress. Ooh, man, the print is really small, but it's quite bold. Look how small that print is. It's so tiny. Alright, I felt like I was back in the day, early days of guns, trying to get a band off the ground while working with subpar players. Jack was great, but he hadn't done anything recently, and while Jerry Heller had made his home in the hip-hop world, he hasn't done anything of merit in the rock world. Sam was a nice Jewish attorney from the East Coast, who visited his mom's regularly, and seemed to know nothing about the music business whatsoever. It was a carnival all over again, amid a music industry that was completely alien to me. No? Okay. Well, I'll tell you what, let's, no, I'm not going to finish this book tonight, but we shall see. I hate it when they number pages, like, on the opposite side. Okay, what? Is that 457 or 437? Oh, Jesus. Stop it. I don't know. We're not going to finish it tonight. As far as the band went, it was no better. The singer, Rod Jackson, turned out to be unmotivated and a junkie. Johnny Griparic was and is a great bass player, but didn't have the touring experience he really needed for the long haul. And Ryan Roxy, whom I met from Alice Cooper's band and hired as a second guitarist, was only interested in getting as much of the publishing as possible. The drummer, Matt Lang, was the most experienced and even-keeled of the bunch. And, of course, there was me playing the role of boss, which wasn't a role I was comfortable with. I split all of the publishing and advanced equally with everyone, so it seemed more like a team effort than it really was. So in the end, it was just a mess. All I wanted to do was get the record done and get back on the road. I took a deal with Cock Records because they made the most solid offer, which was a huge mistake due to the fact that they dropped the ball soon after the record was released, which did nothing to help the situation at all. Don't you hate that? You trust somebody to do the thing, and then they don't do the thing every single damn time. Jerry Heller proved to be a true cannibal manager. He tried to take me for everything given the chance. I've heard stories to that effect from others in the business as well. The only thing that Jerry did do was get us the opening slot on the AC/DC tour for Stiff Upper Lip, and that is how he bought my confidence as a manager. Meanwhile, Jerry tried to get me to sign a contract that granted him 20% of all the money I'd make with Snake Pit, plus 20% of my future earnings from Guns, for eternity. Perla didn't trust him and suggested I shouldn't sign it. And when I showed the contract to my new attorney, David Codico, he told me it was suicidal. He got into it with Jerry and straight up called him an asshole, so Jerry fired him, which was surreal because he had no authority to do so. My manager can't fire my attorney. But not wanting to give him the pleasure regardless, David quit anyway. In hindsight, it's all pretty laughable, but at the time, it was traumatic. It was all I could do to keep it together. I was without an attorney at that point, when one night I was at home with Perla, and there was a knock at the door. It was the police, who had a warrant for her arrest for violating probation. She was cuffed and stuffed. Perla had recently got a DUI, and wasn't supposed to be driving, but she had been. Ooh, Perla. While she did 56 days in the county jail, Jerry got me to sign that contract when I wasn't in the right frame of mind. I was drinking insane amounts of vodka from morning to night, and I can't imagine that I was clear-headed enough to make rational business decisions. It was my way back on the Motley Crue tour that I first noticed the shakes as a result of having the GTs in the morning. I started drinking early in the day, not so much cure a hangover as to control the DTs. It was a subtle change that would continue and get worse later. Kids, don't drink all the time. Just drink sometimes. Like me. When Perla was in jail, I would go to sleep with a cocktail next to my head on the nightstand, and I would finish it in the morning just to be able to get out of bed to get to the kitchen and make a fresh one to start my day. Often the police wouldn't let me into the county jail to visit her because I had been drinking. I was a real mess. Aside from close to a gallon of vodka a day at home, I drink shots of whiskey with beer chasers all night when I would go out to clubs. The future didn't look bright for me health-wise, but nobody could have told me that back then. After the AC/DC tour, we did a headlining tour of theaters. It was actually costing me money. Personally, I didn't care. After 2 months, Cock ditched us. They pulled our tour support and didn't promote the thing at all. We'd show up to signings and the record wouldn't be in the stores. Damn. I'd have to make a call to get a box of them sent out that day. It was way too Spinal Tap. That sounds terrible. I mean, you think having a signed artist, you would make it your priority to promote them so you can maximize your profit. They're like, yeah, nah, this guy's penis. As the tour wore on, I remember progressively not feeling well in Pittsburgh. I remember thinking that I should go to the hospital before sound check. My next memory is waking up 2 weeks later in a hospital bed with Perla sitting there looking very worried. I had suffered a cardiac myopathy. Years of over-drinking had swollen my heart to the point of rupture, to the point where it was barely strong enough to circulate my blood properly. I couldn't get it through my head that I was out of commission, but I was. Doctors gave me 6 days to 6 weeks to live, but not much more. Once I was well enough to fly back to LA, I was on bed rest and forbidden from drinking or any kind of strenuous physical activity. Wait, don't you get to a certain point where your blood just thickens after so much drinking if you don't keep drinking? I've heard of that. So Slash didn't reach that point yet? Gasp. Must have been the drugs. The doctors installed a defibrillator next to him to keep my heart from stopping and to keep my heart rate steady. At a time I began therapy, starting with very minimal exercise and working my way up. Miraculously, my heart started to heal, and the doctors could not believe that my condition was improving. Eventually, I was able to play again, and I was determined to finish up our club tour. I had been out of circulation for about 4 months, and I was totally sober. When I saw the band again, this time though, through a clear eyes, I realized how dysfunctional it was. Well, between the junkie singer who was on the verge of withdrawal at any moment and the bass player, they seemed like they wanted nothing but to live the whole lifestyle that I had a reputation for. But in my new clear-minded state, it appeared that to me the whole thing was very unprofessional and all over the place. A couple of guys seemed less committed than guys in my high school bands had been. They were treating this whole thing like a free ride, and no one was carrying their weight. I spent the rest of those dates when I wasn't on stage in my bunk. In my bunk, okay. When we got back to LA after the last gig, I stayed up there until everyone was gone, and that was the last I spoke to any of them for quite some time. I'm good friends with Johnny and Matt again, now that enough time has passed. Well, some people say time heals all wounds, but that's only if you have a chance to reconnect and actually work shit out. If you don't, then, well, fuck it. Sobriety also confirmed that feeling that Jerry Heller was draining my life and needed to go, but I had signed that contract and I was bound by it. I finally got a break when Jerry made a mistake that Perla and I discovered after some thorough investigating. Early in our partnership, Jerry got me to record a guitar part for Rod Stewart on the song Human from the album of the same name. He had booked that recording gig for me, which was a material breach of our contract. A manager can't book something like that and take a commission, which he had. In the end, his own actions gave me the legal out I needed to be rid of him. I felt lucky. Wait, if he books you the gig, should he not get a percentage as your manager? Well, it was the contract, legalese, I don't know. This particular period from 1999 to 2001 was easily the darkest period of my existence on this planet. Recreational drinking had morphed into severe alcoholism. I allowed myself to be thrown to the wolves. All these people were taking advantage of me when all I really wanted to do was play and not deal with it at all. It was a huge reality check. I figure I paid my dues after Guns, but it was tough going. But I guess it was something I had to go through to be able to focus and see how tenacious and resilient I really am. and to rediscover how badly I still wanted it. By now, Pearl and I had moved into a new house up in Nichols Canyon, determined to relax and make a new start. We settled into a nice pseudo-domestic life together as best we could, as I continued to jam whenever I chose to, and waited for inspiration to lead me to my next band situation. In 2001, I agreed to play at Michael Jackson's 40th birthday celebration at Madison Square Garden, and Pearl and I flew out for it. This was my first gig since my operation, so I was looking forward to it, and it turned out to be memorable, to say the least. I did a couple days of rehearsal to prepare to perform on September 8 and 10. It promised to be a huge event. Michael had everyone from Jamie Foxx to Liza Minnelli to Marlon Brando, the Jackson 5, and Gloria Estefan on the bill, among others. It was a great show, and everyone in the Michael Jackson entourage was rocking out, though I was doing the best I could to stay away from alcohol. After all, I now had a pacemaker, which made things interesting. When the doctors put in the defibrillator, it was for maintaining a normal heart rate, and for most people this isn't a problem, but I neglected to tell the specialist that once I get up on stage, my heart rate skyrockets. When I took the stage with Michael and got into it, I suddenly hit the chest. What? I was suddenly hit in the chest by a shock, and my vision flooded with electric blue light. This happened about 4 times during each song, and I had no idea what was going on. I thought I had to shorten my guitar cable or a photographer's flash had popped my eyes. And each time it happened, I had to stand there and make it look like everything was status quo. I saw it later on TV and couldn't tell, so I guess I pulled it off. It was all extremely disconcerting, however, until I finally figured out what was what. On the morning of 9/11, we were woken up at 8:15 by David Williams, Michael's house guitar player. "Slash, turn on the TV," he told me. "It's already on," I said. "Is it on the news?" he asked, looking at me kind of oddly. "No, it's on the E channel," I told him. "Well, put on the news." I saw a plane hit the Twin Towers, and moments later the second one hit while I was actually watching. The windows were open to my room so I could see what was going on in the distance. That was probably one of the most unnerving events I'd ever experienced. As you can imagine, the whole hotel was in pandemonium, and there were people running around the hallways as if it were the end of the civilized world. In a way, it kind of was. And Perla was still asleep. I had to wake her up and try to explain what was happening. I think it took a few minutes before it sank in. Michael and his immediate entourage had left the building and were safely on a plane out of the country. I believe. Okay. But we were stuck there, and the city turned upside down. Gee, Michael. That's ignorant. Ugh. Oh, whiskey. I thought the safest place to be was there, where we were, but Perla thought differently. She wanted out of there. She was convinced that the air was filled with toxins, but we couldn't get a ride out. And for some reason, a lot of Michael's dancers and background singers had convened in our room because everyone was trapped in Manhattan with no way out. Perla really wanted to get home, so she was in an intense state trying to figure out a way to get us across the country. Eventually we found a limo that took us across the only bridge that was open at that point, the George Washington Bridge. We continued across New Jersey to the Poconos, which is a resort area in Pennsylvania. Perla found us a room in the Pocono Palace, this love-themed hotel that she knew about. I didn't ask how. When we finally got there, it was like something I'd only seen in magazines. This place had a champagne glass for a bathtub, satin sheets and velvet blankets on a rotating bed, tacky red carpets, and mirrors on the ceiling. By the time we got there, we were dead tired. We collected our dinner tickets from the front desk, because that's the kind of place this was. We headed to the smorgasbord-style dinner. Like every other couple there, we were assigned a number and had designated seats at a big round table filled with other couples. We were sitting there with old folks from New Jersey who had renewed their vows, and nerdy people who'd just gotten married, and a few couples who should have known better. There was nothing beautiful or romantic about that place at all. Everyone we interacted with was particularly scared of us, but what scared us most about them was that no one was aware of the tragedy that had just occurred 100 miles away. There was a shitty band and a stand-up comic booked as dinner entertainment. There was miniature golf, horseback riding, couples riding, and every cliched romantic activity imaginable. Love was a Pied Piper for all of those fucking misfits. When we got to talking with any of them who knew about the attack, they didn't seem to care. They were wallowing in love and were so into it that 9/11 wasn't an issue worth discussing. We were stuck there, strangers, in a strange land for 3 days. Then we bunny hopped, flight by flight, back to LA. I think that's where I'm going to call it. Waffles! I appreciate you guys for tuning in. I'm just going to drink whiskey silently unless anybody wants to chat. Does anyone want to chat? I don't think you guys do. But, that's fine. Make some bourbon! I don't know. I will make a concerted effort to try to have my station set up for painting tomorrow. And hopefully I'll see you guys there for Bobby Ross Wednesday. I've been skipping those for quite a while, but I feel like I need to do something because penis. Yeah, you heard me. Anyways, I'll talk to you guys later. I'll be on tomorrow around 8:30, 9 o'clock Central. And hope to see you there. Ooh, what's up in peace. Okay, bye!